Forget everything you thought you knew about the mafia. Forget the Godfathers, the stern dons, and the gangsters in expensive suits. Today, we descend into the very belly of the concrete jungle of early 20th century New York to tell a story that they tried to erase from the archives for decades. A story about those feared even by the most ruthless thugs. The story of the all-female gang that built its empire on the streets of Brooklyn. How did a handful of desperate women who had nothing but sharp wits and a thirst for life manage to bring the entire criminal underworld of the city's most dangerous borough to its knees? What laws did they live by, and why were they feared more than the police and the Italian mafia? Watch until the end, and you will learn the secret of their power that authorities kept hidden for decades, and why the name of their leader was deliberately erased from all police archives. The early 20th century, Brooklyn. This isn't the trendy borough we know today. It's a boiling cauldron of poverty, immigrants from all over the world, and broken dreams. For a woman here, there were only three paths: backbreaking work in a factory for pennies, a loveless marriage, or the streets. But there are always those who refuse to choose from the options given. Those who are ready to write their own rules in blood and audacity. And she was one of them. Her name was Maggie O'Connell, but the streets knew her as Maggie the Razor. The daughter of Irish immigrants, she saw nothing but filth and injustice from childhood. She watched her father break his back in the docks for pennies, while her mother faded away from illness. Maggie understood a simple truth. In this world, honest work only gets you a hernia and an early grave, and she wanted to live for real, vibrantly, and without looking back. It all began not with grand heists, but with desperation. Maggie gathered others like herself around her, girls who had been cast aside by society. Pickpockets, factory workers, dancers from cheap cabarets. They were united by one thing: they had nothing left to lose. They called themselves the Diamond Cats. Diamonds because they aspired to luxury. Cats because they were graceful, cunning, and always landed on their feet. At first it was petty shoplifting, but the Cats turned it into an art form. They developed an entire system. One girl would distract the shopkeeper, while another, wearing a wide skirt with special hidden pockets, would walk out with the most expensive goods. They were inconspicuous, charming, and ruthless. Male police officers and guards simply couldn't believe these lovely creatures were capable of such audacity, and that was their strength. But Maggie the Razor understood you can't build an empire on stolen goods. The real money came with Prohibition. While the clumsy male gangs were waging bloody wars for control over alcohol supplies, the Diamond Cats took a different path. They opened a network of speakeasies. But these weren't dirty dens for drunks. They were elite establishments, hidden behind the signs of laundromats and tailor shops. In the Cats bars, the best music always played, the liquor was top shelf, and most importantly, it was safe. Maggie enforced a strict law: no shootings or brawls inside. Anyone who broke the rule, even if he were Al Capone himself, was permanently banned, and his reputation on the streets would be destroyed. The Cats had their own methods. They collected compromising information on all the influential people in the city who visited their establishments. This meant that the Cats were always one step ahead of any attempt to put pressure on them. They had the conqueror's layers in the law.
Judges, prosecutors, police chiefs, they all relaxed in the cozy atmosphere of Maggie's bars, never suspecting that their every careless word was being recorded. This was their ultimate weapon: information. They knew all the dirty secrets of the city. So when the Cats had problems with the law, one phone call to the right person solved everything. The police simply turned a blind eye to their activities. They became untouchable. At the head of this empire stood Maggie. She was nothing like a typical mafia leader. She didn't wear men's suits or smoke cigars. Her weapons were an icy gaze, a mind as sharp as a razor, and an iron will. She ran her gang like a family. The cats had their own code of honor, which was more important than any state law. And the first rule was loyalty. Betrayal was punished not just with death, but with complete oblivion. One legend tells of a girl named Rosie who fell in love with a cop and started feeding him information. When Maggie found out, she didn't stage a public execution. She did something worse. She used her connections to have the cop framed for corruption and dishonorably discharged. Then, she financially ruined Rosie's entire family, leaving him penniless. Finally, Maggie went to Rosie and said, "I didn't take your life. I took everything that made it worth living." Such ruthlessness was necessary. The male-dominated world of crime was not going to give up so easily. The Italian and Irish mafia families who controlled Brooklyn initially laughed at the Skirt Squad. They thought they could easily muscle in on their business. The first to try was Irish mob boss Danny the Hammer Cassidy. He approached Maggie with a protection offer, which was really just veiled extortion. Maggie listened with a smile, poured him the best whiskey, and said, "Mr. Cassidy, Brooklyn is my home, and in my home, I don't pay for the roof. I build it myself." Danny took this as an insult. The next night, his men trashed one of the cats' bars. They thought it would scare the women. They were dead wrong. Maggie's response was asymmetric and brilliant. She didn't hire hitmen. Instead, she found Danny's wife. Her girls gained her trust, and soon Maggie knew everything about the Hammer's operations, where he kept his money, who his debtors were, who his enemies were. Using this information, Maggie executed a masterful plan. In a single night, all of Cassidy's liquor warehouses accidentally burned down, his chief accountant lost all financial records, and his most loyal men were arrested on an anonymous tip. Danny Cassidy was destroyed, not physically, but financially and morally. He lost everything: money, power, respect. He became a nobody. This story spread like wildfire throughout New York. No one ever dared to underestimate the Diamond Cats again. They became full-fledged players on the criminal stage. They controlled bootlegging, gambling dens, and even a piece of the docks. Their razor-sharp heels clicked on the Brooklyn pavement, and that sound made the hearts of the most notorious gangsters tremble. The Cats' empire flourished. They lived in a luxury they could once only dream of: silk dresses, diamond necklaces, the most expensive cars. They were the queens of their own world, built on the ruins of others' hopes. But like any empire, theirs was also destined to fall. And the end came from where they least expected it. They weren't brought down by the FBI or rival gangs. They were brought down by the repeal of Prohibition.
In 1933, alcohol became legal again. Their main source of income dried up overnight. The male mafia clans, like the Luciano family, adapted quickly. They moved into drugs, labor unions, and large-scale racketeering. This was a game Maggie refused to play. She considered drugs a dirty business that destroyed people from the inside. Her principles, which had helped her climb to the top, were now dragging her down. A rift began to form within the gang. Some of the cats, drunk on power and money, wanted to continue. They were willing to do anything to maintain their lavish lifestyle. But Maggie was adamant. She understood their time was passing. The golden age of street audacity was ending, and the era of systematic corporate mafia was beginning. And there was no place for them in this new era. The final chapter of the Diamond Cats is shrouded in mystery, which is what makes it legendary. There are no official records of their downfall. They simply vanished. They disappeared as suddenly as they had appeared. According to one version, Maggie gathered all the money, divided it among her most loyal members, and they left the country to start new, quiet lives. They had achieved what they wanted: freedom and independence, and left the stage at the right time. According to another, darker version, The internal conflict led to a bloodbath in which the former sisters-in-arms destroyed each other. It's said this is why the police hid all the records. The authorities didn't want to admit that for 10 years, an entire borough was controlled by a female gang, while they could do nothing about it. It would have been too great a blow to their reputation. And what became of Maggie, the Razor O'Connell? Her fate is the biggest mystery of all. Some say she lived to a ripe old age somewhere in Europe, owning a small hotel on the coast. Others swear her ghost still roams the old streets of Brooklyn, a reminder of a time when women didn't wait for fate to be kind, but took it with their own hands. Her body was never found, and no case file was ever opened. The story of the Diamond Cats is not just a crime saga. It's a hymn to the power of the human spirit. It's a story about how, even when the whole world is against you, even when you're at the very bottom, you always have a choice. You can submit and accept your fate, or you can clench your fists, grit your teeth, and carve out your right to happiness from life itself. These women were not angels. They were cruel, calculating, and dangerous. But they built their empire in a world that gave them zero chances. They proved that strength isn't just about muscles and guns. Strength is intelligence, cunning, unity, and an unshakable belief in oneself. They were a bright, burning comet that streaked across the night sky of New York, leaving behind a legend that we have told today. The legend of the Queens of criminal Brooklyn. This story is a prime example that rules are made to be broken and boundaries are meant to be erased. Did you enjoy the story? Want more tales about those who dared to challenge the system? Then show your energy right now. Hit the like button on this video, subscribe to the channel, and ring that bell so you don't miss new stories that will make your blood run cold. Let me know in the comments what you think of Maggie and her cats. Were they freedom fighters or just ruthless criminals? Your opinion is very important to us. And here's a hook for the future. As soon as this video gets 1,000 likes, I'll release the story of Chicago's most mysterious and brutal gang, the Black Hand, whose methods made even the most seasoned mafiosi tremble. Stay tuned.